My name is Jose Luis Alamo.
My name is Thomas Roach. I'm 69 years old.
My name is Joyce Granger. I was 17 when I was incarcerated in 1983.
I was 17 years old.
I was 15.
I'm the trigger man, and really it was an accident.
It was something like out of a movie. Like it just happened all at once, so fast.
Chain of events happened. How do you say, I killed a female. I stabbed her.
My name is Dwight Whetstone.
My name is Hayward Fennell. I'm a 68-year-old juvenile lifer.
I'm a juvenile lifer.
I made a bad decision, and a decision I live to regret for the rest of my life.
I shot him in the leg. He ended up bled to death.
I served 23 years and 8 months in prison.
I spent 35 years in prison, 35.
I was incarcerated for 23 years and 6 months.
I don't know exactly how many days, but I spent 48 years of my life in jail.
I was about maybe 20 days short of 50 years.
We were all teenagers when we went in.
That's one of the biggest mistakes I ever made in my life, which I would never forgive myself for.
I'm Michael Lehman. I was 14 years old when I was sent to prison for murder. I spent 30 years. I'm 45 now. And this is the story of my freedom.
This is a free call from
Michael Lehman.
an inmate at SCI Rockview. You may start the conversation now.
I probably think about some aspect of it almost every day. Just there's an incredible amount of guilt and shame, and it's just like this weight. I wish things had been different. I wish I could have been a different person. I don't know if I could have stopped the other people, but I could have at least tried, and that's what I think about the most.
Not many of us can point to the one night and just a few moments of it that changed the course of our lives forever. But Michael Lehman can, and he can't stop thinking about it. June 18th, 1988. One night and the series of decisions he made on it changed his life, destroyed someone else's, and he'll never forgive himself for it. On that night, he was 14 years old.
There's a constant, if I'd just done this, or if I'd just done that, or, I don't know, I guess there's also part of me that doesn't want to forget. Like, I don't have that right to forget. I have to remember.
Michael's worst night of his life, as he still considers it, started with what was becoming a common occurrence in his early teenage years. He ran away from home. At the time, he was living in this group home for troubled boys on North George Street in York. It had been his home for more than 6 months, his choice, but he made a habit of sneaking out. And so while everyone else was home asleep on that late summer night in 1988, Michael snuck out again. He went looking for 2 other boys from the home, Dwayne Morningwake and Miguel Yoder, and Cornell Mitchell, a drug dealer who befriended the boys a few days earlier.
They were walking along these railroad tracks, and they said they were going back to the group home.
At the railroad tracks, the boys and Cornell Mitchell devised a plan to go back to the group home and rob a counselor there, Kwame Beatty. Beatty wasn't supposed to be at the home that night, but he agreed to fill in so a coworker could go to a wedding. It's the kind of guy Kwame was, a dedicated young man who gave 100% of himself and was well regarded by all who knew him. But the boys thought Kwame was too harsh and too rule-oriented. So that night, they were out for revenge.
They were going in to get their stuff, their clothes, and steal the petty cash. So I went along with them.
Later, Michael would testify in court that he agreed to the plan because Cornell Mitchell threatened to kill him if he did not go along with it, and he didn't want to be seen as a wimp. So Michael offered to help with a key part of the plan, how to get inside undetected.
I explained to them that I had left the window open, and hey, we could go in through there. So that's what we did. We went to the home. While we're on the second floor, the floor where all the other residents, the other boys were sleeping, Cornell Mitchell pulled out this large knife and then a little steak knife and said that Dwayne, Morningwake, and Miguel Yoder were going to go downstairs with him, and I was to stay up here and make sure nobody woke up. And he gave me the small steak knife.
Michael waited upstairs with the knife as the others went down to Kwame's room. Then Michael heard noises. It sounded like a struggle. He left his post in the hallway to see what was happening downstairs, but the others would not open Kwame's door.
I went back upstairs and I closed all the doors to all the rooms where the boys are sleeping. And I kind of sat down in the hallway and I realized what was going on, that they weren't just robbing it, the place, that they were killing Kwame.
And killing him violently. As the two teens held Kwame on his bed, Cornell Mitchell stabbed him 21 times in the chest, neck, shoulder, and stomach. The mattress was completely soaked in blood. Blood splashed on the wall. When he no longer heard noises coming from the room, Michael again went downstairs. This time, the others let him in. They needed help ransacking the place.
I could see that Cornell was covered in blood, and he just kind of motioned at me with the knife and said, grab something. And I reached up on a shelf and grabbed the first thing I could find and ran back upstairs.
They stole cigarettes, a handful of cash, and Kwame's car key. Michael grabbed a box of tasty cakes, and they left in a hurry. No one would find Kwame until hours later, his body slumped on the floor with one leg still up on the bed.
I felt like I couldn't get out of the situation. I realize now, there was a million ways I could have got out of it, but at the time I couldn't. I just didn't see any of that.
Mitchell drove the boys in Kwame's car to Harrisburg. They dumped the knives and their bloody clothes and used the money they stole to buy bus tickets back to York. As they waited for the bus in the terminal that morning, mere hours after the murder, the boys fell asleep. Police arrested all four of them later that day in York.
I wish I had had enough courage to leave. I mean, the window was right there. I could have just left and went across the street or to the neighbor's house or anything.
30 years later, locked in state prison more than 100 miles from home, Michael Lehman regrets everything he did that night. Every bad decision, every passed up opportunity to get away, to get help, to stop it.
I could have told him, hey, let's not do this. I could have, opened that door and said stop. I could have done anything. And I did nothing. I just sat in the hallway and cried and prayed to God they wouldn't kill me next.
But you were sleeping and you got a phone call and said what?
Phone call. It was like that my son was in at City Hall and that he had been involved in a murder.
Michael's mother, Sharon's life also changed that summer night.
Yeah, so I went right in.
She met Michael at the police station not long after he was arrested. She remembers he looked scared, like a fish out of water. A 14-year-old boy detained by police for suspicion of murder. He was tired, about to be interrogated, and about to tell all.
He'd never been involved with any criminal activity before. So I couldn't understand that he was really that involved in it. I guess I just didn't even want to believe that it had happened.
She never believed, for most reasons, a mother would doubt her son would be involved in a murder. But Sharon's relationship with Michael was complicated. She took a chance on Michael, a son she raised by choice.
When he was 7 years old, he came to live with us.
Sharon and her husband at the time adopted Michael in 1980. His first 7 years before that were about as unstable as an early childhood could be. A child psychologist later described the family situation as very dysfunctional, that Michael was repeatedly abandoned and reabandoned, and that he's been seriously emotionally disturbed forever. He wasn't yet in 3rd grade.
It seems almost like a purging that was done, His father and his mother were both alive, and he had grandparents and nieces and nephews and things, but nobody stepped up and offered to care for him. So then he was put up for adoption.
When Sharon took him in, she says at first he was an angel. but then started getting into trouble. Petty things. He'd frustrate his teachers, get on the ground and bark like a dog. He bit all the heads off his action figures.
It was never anything violent. It was always just like pain in the neck things.
As Michael got a little older, he developed a habit of running away. He'd be gone for days at a time. The last time, he didn't come back and instead took himself to Children and Youth Services. They ultimately placed him at the group home on North George Street, the home where Kwame Beatty was murdered, and from where down the street at the police station, 14-year-old Michael Lehman confessed to being part of the crime. He told police everything.
I felt awful. I felt awful because I felt like I couldn't protect him, and I didn't, you know, he was in the children's home so he could deal with these other problems, and instead of that, he's involved in a murder.
Cornell Mitchell and Miguel Yoder would later plead guilty for their roles in the crime. Dwayne Morningwake took his case to trial, as did Michael, who was then 15 years old and charged as an adult. He testified in his own defense, explaining the murder plan step by step. The whole time he thought since he was just the lookout, he could set the record straight and go home, and it would all be over.
People would realize, oh, he didn't participate in the murder, that I was just there, that I was scared, that all these things would come out, and everything would end up okay.
He was leaving the course of the rest of his life up to a jury of 12 strangers, and he was confident.
I just figured that there's no one who's going to look at the situation and find me guilty.
But the jury did not see things Michael's way. They found him guilty of robbery, guilty of conspiracy, and guilty of murder.
I just was stunned. I don't know how else to describe it. I was just stunned. Everything just shut down. You know, yes, I was there. Yes, you know, I was a lookout. Yes, I stole something, and yes, I helped them dispose of evidence, but I didn't kill anyone. So how was I guilty of first-degree murder?
I just can't believe that it played out that way.
The jury then sentenced Michael to life in prison with no chance of parole. It was ready to give him the death penalty, but 4 jurors refused. When the trial was over, Michael went straight back to jail, where at 15 years old, he settled in to stay for the rest of his life.
I just couldn't understand it. You know, how are they giving me a life sentence for what I did? Somebody will straighten this out. Somebody will fix this. And that's, you know, what I latched onto and what I held out for. And that's how I was able to get through each day.
In prison, Michael Lehman met other inmates in his same situation. Boys and girls growing up to be men and women with no expectation of ever living outside the walls. The system has a name for them: juvenile lifers. Pennsylvania prisons were home to 523 of them, by far the most of any other state. But one court decision suddenly struck down what had been inescapable sentences for juvenile lifers across the country, and it changed the courses of many of their lives again. That's coming up on this Project Community Special.
Prison was
an epiphany, an eye-opener for me.
Prison was helpful.
A blessing.
a bad place to be.
For me, prison was a learning experience. It was a place of discipline.
It was life-changing.
Prison gave me the time to fix myself, to correct myself, to work on the things that I needed to do. I had a lot of issues.
For hundreds of convicted murderers in Pennsylvania, this was their childhood home. The high fences, the razor wire, the guards. And for most of them, this is where they planned to spend their adulthood, where they'd retire, and where they'd die. Juvenile lifers with no way out. Like Gregory Sourbeer, who when he was 14, shot and killed his mother as she was watching TV at their home in Columbia, Lancaster County. And Michael Bourgeois. He was 17 when he tied up his adoptive mother and stepfather, then brutally tortured and killed them. Tabitha Buck was 17 when she helped kill a high school classmate. Zachary Whitman was 15 when he stabbed and slashed his brother to death. Dante Chambers robbed a college student of drugs, while others lured that student into the woods, shot him, and set him on fire. Alec Kreider broke into his friend's house, murdering his friend and his friend's parents for a motive still never made public. And the list goes on. Larry Markle, Emru Kabede, Darren Nesbitt, Warren Batty Jr., and Michael Lehman. 523 of them originally sentenced to live out their lives in Pennsylvania state prisons.
Everybody deserves a chance, a second chance.
And Robert Hammond has talked with them all.
They have your personal number?
They have my office number, yes. So they call the office, they leave, they all have my email address, they all email me when things are going wrong or if things are going right.
How often do you hear from them?
Probably every week.
He manages the state's juvenile lifer program and has met with each lifer as they started the resentencing process.
They are not the juveniles that they were when they committed the crime. And because of that, we believe, or I believe, that they deserve a second chance.
That second chance granted by the U.S. Supreme Court. In 2012, the court ruled that life sentences without parole for anyone under 18 were cruel and unusual punishment, a violation of their Eighth Amendment rights, and could no longer be handed down. Another ruling 4 years later threw out all life without parole sentences for juveniles across the country, forcing them to be resentenced, with parole now an option. Because of these rulings, so far, nearly 200 juvenile lifers in Pennsylvania have been released.
How did you feel when you were hit with the reality that you were home?
Dozens of them meet every week in Philadelphia at this support group.
I'm still very apprehensive about nighttime.
I'm so fearful. Like I'm scared of like just being, this being a dream.
Wow. Has anybody else experienced that?
Here, lifers who've been paroled for several years can mentor those just coming out. And some meet for the first time here as free people. While these men and women have stayed out of trouble, not all have. We requested data from the Pennsylvania Department of Corrections that shows, as of June 2019, 9% of the juvenile lifers released, or 17 of them, have violated parole. 3%, or 6 lifers, were rearrested by police, including for drugs, terroristic threats, and assaulting a child.
Is that a concern, that you do have some that are reoffending?
There's always a concern with any population that you deal with. We monitor all of our juvenile lifers closely until we feel comfortable enough where the juvenile lifer in question is actually proven that he's going to be successful.
The reoffending rate among juvenile lifers is substantially lower than in the general prison population, where statewide about 60% of all parolees get rearrested within a few years of being released.
Broad-based sentencing structures,
But the state's lead voice for crime victims, Jen Storm, warns to not celebrate the juvenile lifer stat too much yet.
And at some point, the cameras will go away, some of the immediate resources will go away, and are these people equipped to succeed? And I don't think we're going to know that for 3-5 years.
Storm says while she believes the parole program as a whole is working, it's still an experiment in Pennsylvania, and she doesn't want others to get hurt because of it.
Hey man, you guys are doing good though. You know what I mean? You're doing good. Everybody's doing good.
Neither does Robert Hammond, who knows what it's like to be on the other side of a juvenile lifer's crime.
Oh yeah.
When he was younger, one of his friends was killed by a juvenile lifer. And Hammond, in his current role, met with that man to discuss his resentencing and ultimate release.
We were actually able to get closure, actually, for both of us. And the day that he released, he promised me that he will make good, and he has been making good ever since.
Prison is prison. Yesterday, today, and tomorrow are all going to be the same. Now imagine 30 years of the same day over and over and over. And that's prison.
Michael Lehman has been trapped in that prison loop for 10,931 days, and the last 19 should be easier than the first few hundred were. That's when he learned a rebellious, stubborn teenager does not fit into a system that's made to be regimented, controlled, and adult.
I thought to myself and said, Mike, you have to take responsibility for your actions. I came to the realization, okay, I'm probably in prison for the rest of my life, more than likely. Just because I'm in here doesn't mean I can't have some quality quality of life.
So he tried to make the most of the life sentence he'd been handed. He got his GED and then worked to help fellow inmates get theirs. He took architectural drafting classes, worked in the prison carpentry shop, and served a few stints as president of the Prison Lifers Association. But the Miller court decision changed everything. For the first time, he started to really think about living outside those high prison walls. And when a judge changed his sentence from life without parole to a 30-year minimum, he could finally start to plan for it.
One of the things I've said is, when I'm finally home, that I would set my alarm for midnight and then get up in the middle of the night and just walk outside. Because I can. I have not been outside past 10 o'clock in 30 years.
So I was thinking we could just put his stuff for tomorrow in this bag.
At his sister's house, a home Michael has never seen, she and his mom are filling a bag with Michael's new life.
You can wear this one.
Clothes and shoes he'll change into as he leaves his prison jumpsuit and shackles behind.
I still can't believe he's going to wear this stuff tomorrow. It feels like dressing a baby to take them home from the hospital. Except for he's a pretty big baby.
Long gestation.
They have been waiting for this day for 30 years as well, even though they didn't know if it would ever come.
Because this was never supposed to happen, ever. He was in there to wait until he died, and we were just here to keep him company until he died.
It's been a long road.
But they're ready to get to know Michael on the outside.
There it is. He's packed.
I guess you'd call it like bittersweet, because you have that bitterness of what happened and you can't undo. You can't unring the bell. You can't bring someone back to life. But there's that sweetness of seeing him be able to be a part of the world again.
So from yesterday? That definitely makes it real. Yeah, definitely.
30 years of waiting and hoping have led to this. A rainy morning at Rockview State Prison, but for Michael, it could not be a more beautiful day, because for the first time since he was 14 years old, he's about to experience it as a free person. The waiting is over. Michael Lehman, now 44 years old, is a prisoner no more. He's dreamt about how this moment would be and how he wanted his first taste of freedom to actually taste good. So on his way home, he and his family stopped at the closest greasy spoon they could find.
Are you used to being told what to do?
Yes. Well, they actually have it here. 2 eggs, home fries, 4 strips of bacon.
Choices and the freedom to make them all around him. And as basic as it sounds, making choices for himself is something he'll have to get used to.
I don't know what to eat first. It's so good. It's so good. I'm actually a lot calmer than I thought I was going to be. Yeah.
This is Michael's first family meal since childhood. Wow. First meal in decades where he can take as long as he wants.
Yeah, I'm waiting. That's my dessert.
And where no guards are watching him.
I feel free. I feel like I'm outside. I feel like I'm no longer confined, and it's awesome.
He's feeling a lot of things in this first day of freedom, including, on the way back home to York County,
trying to ease you.
A little carsick. Over the last 30 years, he's only been on the road a handful of times, mostly to and from court, and always handcuffed. The feeling could also be a bit of nerves and excitement, as the realization that he is home for good sinks in.
That is exactly what I did on mine. Exactly.
The clock on the next phase of his life has started, and he has a lot of ground to make up.
You're right.
First up, how to use a smartphone.
I put it under company.
And how to process what is happening.
I'm happy. I'm excited. You know, I know I may not seem really excited. I'm not a hugely outward, emotional person, but I'm really excited. I'm really happy. This is a lot. Okay.
Michael can already feel, though, what is riding on his freedom and the pressure to not slip up and jeopardize the release of the next lifer waiting in line.
We have to get it right. And I think most juvenile lifers feel that responsibility. The door's open a crack. If nothing else, let's make sure that crack doesn't close. And if we can, Let's push the door open a little more.
Hopefully that clarifies a little bit why.
But how are juvenile lifers expected to stay on the straight and narrow? And could putting on a pair of goggles make all the difference? Next.
When I got out of prison,
When I got out, I
had a couple emotional breakdowns.
I went back to my female companion that I had.
hit the ground running. I did everything I needed and wanted to do, and then some.
I was hungry and longing for liver, rice, and gravy.
When I got out of prison, I stepped out the front door. I took a breath, and I started a new chapter in my life. All right. It's not easy to get in, but it's not too bad.
Michael Lehman settled in quite quickly to his new bedroom, a tiny loft in his parents' house, a place where he hasn't stepped foot in since he was 14 years old.
What was the first night like up here?
It's so quiet. It's so dark. And that was weird. It took a little while to get used to that. But once I fell asleep, I slept straight through.
It's not a palace, but it's also not a prison cell. And that's what means the most to Michael now.
For 30 years, I didn't have my own space. I always had to share it with somebody else. Always. And this is my space.
He also has his own stuff, but not much of it. All his life possessions, all 44 years worth, fit into this one metal locker. The only thing he brought out of prison with him.
I started off on vaudeville.
A few books, pictures his family sent him, a pair of shoes. The fresh start that nearly 200 juvenile lifers in Pennsylvania have been given so far really is just that. They start life again essentially from scratch.
Now that you're on the outside and you'll be interacting with a lot of different people, what are you going to say to the people who don't think you should be free?
Most of the people that don't believe I deserve a chance are always going to think that way. All I can do is live the best life I can and do the things that I can. And if by example, or maybe by speaking with me, they change their mind, then they change their mind. I've been given this chance that maybe I don't deserve. So I have to do very well at it. I don't want to throw it in that garbage can. It'll just fill it up to show that I deserve it.
And he thinks that starts with trying to establish a quiet, normal life for himself.
Now it's lunch. And
meeting new friends, since all of his are still in prison, spending time with his family, and making up for 30 years of lost time.
I don't know, maybe 3 months is a little unrealistic to say. I'd like to meet a good woman. But yeah, I have to learn who I am as a free man. That's
learning to live as a free man.
Yes. Yeah. Because I don't know how to do that. I went from my parents taking care of me, to the juvenile system taking care of me, to the prison system taking care of me, to providing 3 meals a day, giving me clothes, all of that stuff. And now I have to do all that on my own.
So how are juvenile lifers like Michael supposed to make that transition?
And let me know when that's back on there.
All right, cool.
How do they see a future for themselves living on their own?
Well, right now, we're in the kitchen.
The answer might come from a pair of goggles.
Does it look familiar?
Yeah, looks like my room.
Before ever stepping foot outside the prison, many juvenile lifers in Pennsylvania virtually
Here's where you'll be residing.
walk around the community correction centers they move into after their release.
This is crazy. Technology, huh?
It is a bit unconventional.
Here we go.
And Pennsylvania is the first state to use the technology in this way. But Danny McIntyre with the Bureau of Community Corrections thought, why not try?
Virtual reality allows us to show them virtually some of this technology that's out there so they're better prepared, so they're not embarrassed.
And they're not stressed. Don Jones used the goggles at the tail end of the 26.5 years he spent in prison for murder. We met him just a week after he got out.
It was like a sigh of relief, really. Like coming home, that eased a lot of anxiety off me. I know I got something I'm going to that's clean, that's professional, that I'm safe at.
Right now, the virtual reality program mainly shows juvenile lifers the layout of their new homes.
Tell me when that blue dot is on the triangle again.
But eventually, McIntyre wants them to teach lifers how to use an ATM, order food from a touchscreen, and how to interact with other simple innovations they know little about.
We had juvenile lifers, you know, that would get out and we'd transport them across the turnpike, and sitting there with one of the staff members told me he didn't understand how to wash his hands. He couldn't figure out where the knob was to wash their hands. It's all sensors now. So the simple things that we take for granted, they're still learning.
Brand new, it was like the Jetsons.
And while most juvenile lifers are able to embrace the changes they've missed out on over the years, some struggle
It's like
right out of the gate.
I'm like an infant. It's like I got to learn how to crawl, then walk, then talk, then be on my own.
We met with Kevin Evans at a halfway house just 4 days after his release. He feels the world has changed so much without him that he gets spooked just walking outside.
Right now, everything to me is like real scary. And I don't know if it's going to get better or it's going to get worse.
He was in for 43 years. That's 70% of his life. And when they finally opened the doors of the prison to let him go free, he froze.
So I'm standing there like, they tell me, what's going on? I said, well, where are the handcuffs? They said, why? I said, because I ain't used to getting in the car unless I had handcuffs on. I couldn't believe it, that they was letting me go.
Most of your life you've been behind bars.
The Department of Corrections offers juvenile lifers counseling. They're given help finding housing and jobs. They're not allowed to contact their victims' families or even be in the same neighborhood. They have to check in with their parole agent and stay out of trouble.
Like, people think that freedom is free, and it's not. You got to work for your freedom. You got to walk that straight line. You know, so that's always in the front of my mind at all times, that I'm on parole. You know, I got to walk this straight line.
But as much help as juvenile lifers are given to navigate their new world, they are largely on their own. And that's a responsibility even as adults they are not used to.
It's very important that they feel comfortable the first couple of weeks, and we slowly reintegrate them back into the community in a way that they can feel like the stress isn't there, the anxiety is not overwhelming, and they know that in the end they can be successful and they can lead the way for others.
So how is Michael Lehman managing his newfound freedom? And what has already taken his life by surprise? We check in with him again next.
Life on the outside.
Life on the outside is pretty fast.
Life on the outside is spectacular.
Beautiful. For me, life on the outside, every day I strive to be a better person than I was the day before.
It's more than I imagined it would be.
Expensive.
Life is everything you make it to be.
You think you have time for multiple things during that day, but you don't.
It's challenging.
Life on the outside is completely different than I expected it to be.
Ever since he walked out the front door at Rockview State Prison more than 4 months ago, Michael Lehman has barely stopped moving. He doesn't feel like he can or should. He missed out on 30 years of experiences while he was locked up. So even after putting in long hours working, it beats where he was.
Yep.
Michael got a job at his brother-in-law's rebar supply shop. A job is required now that he's on parole. It fills most of his days, and he's making a lot more here than the 42 cents an hour he made in the carpentry shop in prison.
Yeah, there's just a lot more stuff out along the highway than there used to be.
He also has been getting a new perspective on his new freedom from behind the wheel.
Sometimes it just hits me, the fact that I'm driving home.
He got his driver's license soon after his release, and sometimes on his way home, he turns down random roads just to see where they'll take him. And at home now, he has someone waiting for him, a girlfriend, a friend of the family who reached out to Michael within a week of his release after she heard his story and offered to help.
It's a lot being the girlfriend of a guy who just did 30 years, you know, and for murder. Coming in.
She's the one who taught Michael how to drive and how to navigate the daily ins and outs of life as a free person. Exactly the kind of partner Michael was skeptical he'd be able to find, especially so quickly.
she's been an absolute blessing in my life. She's made the transition a lot better and a lot easier.
But there are parts of his new life that Michael is still adjusting to. He enjoys the privacy he never had before, but not the loneliness that sometimes comes with it.
I thought in prison that, oh, I can't wait to be alone. I can't wait, and I don't like it because it's uncomfortable. 30 years, I was never alone, ever. There was always somebody close by. Even if I didn't have a cellie, there was still the cell next to me or the cell across from me, or I could hear the guards moving. I could hear televisions, and yeah. So that's taken some getting used to, and I didn't expect that.
He also admits that sometimes he misses the structure that living in prison provided, the certainty.
Let us organize it.
Now, what he does with his own life is up to him. There is no certainty, and he's figuring that out.
Just to be comfortable. I think that's something that's just absolutely amazing. I look forward to that more than anything else.
But some people with a connection to juvenile lifers describe life as anything but comfortable.
And this actually was the last picture that was taken with them.
It's torture.
Yeah, right there.
Because every picture is a reminder of what they no longer have.
I haven't seen that picture for a while.
Yeah.
Kwame Beatty's family did not want to talk about their experience, but in court they did. At Michael's resentencing, Kwame's sister testified that she met with Michael in prison 13 years after the murder and said she forgave him. But she considers Michael most responsible for her brother's death because as the lookout, she believes Michael covered for the killers.
It's hard.
But Sherry McMichael and Melissa Vaccaro do want to talk publicly about their younger brother, Stephen.
That's so typical him.
Also the victim of a juvenile lifer's crime.
And here he is.
Stephen Turner was the life of his family. And as his two older sisters watched on, he would run around and pester them as only a younger brother could. And he'd always light up the room with that smile, the one that filled his face.
He loved to bang on the piano keys. I remember that because I played the piano.
But even the memories of him are hardly a consolation.
It's kind of weird, but you kind of try to block out some of these good times because they're hard to think about.
Life has not been the same for anyone in the family ever since Stephen lost his. Stephen was 11 years old in 1981 and just made it to the 6th grade when a neighborhood friend murdered him. Days later, John Waters, then 16, admitted to police that he was the one who did it. He took Stephen to an old farmhouse near their homes in Hampton Township and sexually assaulted him. Then he stabbed Stephen in the back and smashed his head with a rock. And to make sure he was dead, he slit his wrists and stabbed him so hard in the neck, the handle on the knife broke off in his hand. The murder broke Stephen's family.
You never get over it. You never, ever get over it. The pain is just as deep. The sorrow is just as deep. And it just never goes away.
John Waters is now 54 years old and a juvenile lifer. Following the Supreme Court decision, a judge took away his life sentence and made him eligible for parole in 2020. That's something Stephen's family is adamantly against.
I promised my mother on her deathbed that we would make sure that this man never got out of jail.
So by no means legal experts, Melissa and Sherry have dug into the law and are trying to find a way to keep Waters from getting parole.
It scares me to death because I think he'll kill somebody again. And if that ever happened, I would feel like we didn't do enough.
When she says the pain never goes away, she means it. Stephen's sisters do not believe all juvenile lifers should be denied parole.
Evil.
They just want some discretion used in how convicted murderers are getting released.
There are certainly going to be some unjust punishments. I've seen some of them. There's also going to be some that the key needs to be thrown away. And there's a reason why they gave them no parole. Our case, I feel, is one of them.
But on their case, the clock is ticking. It's an unsettling, ever-present reminder that a juvenile lifer's actions made decades ago continue causing pain. And while one man prepares for possible freedom, an entire family is forever trapped in tragedy.
Redemption alone isn't all, because there's so many lives that are affected beyond the person that was killed.
Being a juvenile lifer, I found out that I was a punk.
Being a juvenile lifer is losing all your childhood.
I can show what a lifer looks like.
You're taken from the world and put into a harsh environment.
I came through the system as a juvenile, and here I am today, a full-grown woman, maintaining.
Some people want to see you fail. Some people want to say, oh, see, they don't deserve it.
I'll always be a lifer, always. I'm trying to learn now how to be an adult, productive citizen.
At his home in Wrightsville, Michael Lehman has found the quiet life he wanted after prison.
I just don't delete stuff. That's probably why you have all of these pictures.
But just because it's quiet here does not mean Michael has been sitting still.
Yeah, it was a spur-of-the-moment thing. It just kind of happened.
With no time to waste, he has lived the past 10 months like none other in his life.
Just be doing something dorky.
Filling camera rolls with so many new memories, he sometimes needs time to review them.
That's me with my nieces and nephews.
Pictures of the family time he had never experienced before as an adult, and with family members he only met during brief prison visits. For the first time since he turned 14, he celebrated his birthday with loved ones. A dinner out with family, a birthday cake with candles, and a wish that was not this time for freedom. He went to the dentist, went Christmas shopping, tried his hand at golf. He fell in love with his girlfriend and did things he could not do for decades.
That's what you do at Easter. It's a normal thing that people do. They paint eggs. You didn't paint eggs in prison, so.
He also met up on the outside with his first friend to be released from prison since his own release.
So it's surreal to be out in public in a mall, eating ice cream with my friend when I never thought this was going to happen.
It has been a whirlwind 10 months. So many new experiences, so little time to process them.
There are times where it hits me harder now that I'm free.
And he has been struggling, as many juvenile lifers do, with the responsibilities that come with their freedom and the pressure to live their own life now.
Yeah, you have problems and things crop up in prison, but it's very easy to take care of. I go talk to the counselor, I go talk to the unit manager, I go talk to the guard that's on duty, and I get things fixed immediately. Here, I have to figure out how to fix things.
And that hasn't been easy. Michael crushed his finger at work and then broke his wrist. And he says the health care plan the state set up for him after he was released ran out after a few weeks.
Yeah, I crushed the bone and broke the...
Money was already tight, and he stressed over paying for the surgery.
I thought I was prepared mentally, and then stuff crops up. You think you're armored, you think you're ready, and you have all your tools sharp, and you're ready to go. And then you don't.
There are a lot of things he wished he knew before his release. That cars need oil changes, how to read the terms of a credit card, and how not to fall for internet scams. He ended up learning all of those things on his own, and each a little too late. In the future, he hopes the Department of Corrections can better prepare lifers for what to expect on the outside. But Michael has come a long way, and quickly. And when he needs time to clear his head, this is the spot where he goes to reset.
My vision was narrowed by fences and razor wire for so long, to just have this view of just this expanse. I just come up here to breathe. It's easy to just take that deep breath and just let things go.
When we come back, we'll check in with Michael one last time on the anniversary of the crime and his release.
The best part of having my freedom is...
The best part about having my freedom is that I can make conscious decisions for the better, to help better me. and hopefully my community.
So that feel good, you know, to be free like that.
Best part of having my freedom is being able to just like see my mom or my family members all at once.
And I watch the trees blooming. They don't have trees when you're in jail. I watch the flowers. They don't have flowers when you're in jail.
I think about my victim and his family. I really, that challenges me a lot. Like I can't fully enjoy it yet.
The freedom tasted sweeter, I guess, is a good way to put it. Like something that I never thought I would have, the chance that I never thought I would have, I have.
What a difference a year can make.
Make sure this thing doesn't fly away.
Especially when what happened in that year for such a long time had only been a dream.
I don't think it's gonna rain. It looks okay. Roll the dice.
But the last year for Michael Lehman has been better than any dream because it does not end. This is his life now. 365 days ago, he walked out of prison.
I remember when there used to be horses and cows and stuff in this field.
And walked into this new world.
Don't worry, I got a death grip on the balloon.
He has no intention of ever looking back.
It's kind of weird, it's surreal. It's like, it's been a year? Wow.
It's another milestone in a year that has been filled with them.
You do everything you can inside to eat up your time, to actually, you know, make it go by. And out here, I just wanted to slow down. Oh, man. I know, it's a great view.
The balloon he's carrying is covered with messages from loved ones and new friends.
This one's from Annette.
Oh yeah, congrats, Michael.
Encouragement to make the most of the second chance he never expected.
Oh, Mom did sign it, okay.
Yeah.
He came to the top of this hill near his home with his girlfriend and sister to quietly mark the moment.
This is a celebration. It's me putting myself out in the world and saying, hey, you know, I'm still here. One more, I've made it a year.
Today you celebrate 1 year on this side of the fence. 1 year ago, you said goodbye to the only life you knew for 30 years. 1 year ago, you said see you later to many guys you may in fact never see again. You know I love you. I will stand beside you as much as I possibly can in all your future choices. I pray you see another 30 years on this side of the fence. May all your dreams come true.
Thank you.
These are the new memories Michael is free to cherish.
I remember praying and saying, you know, just 1 year, just give me 1 year. That's all I ask. Just 1 year, and then I can die of a heart attack or something. Just give me one good year. And this has been an amazing year.
He's ready to live his new life to the fullest.
Ready?
And that next chapter starts
and
now.
on 3, I'm going to release it. All right. 1, 2, 3. Oh, it went that way. Wow. It's really going. The wind's really taking it.
For 3 decades, he was stuck in that endless prison loop. He grew up in it. And when he was awarded his freedom from it, everything changed. He, like hundreds of other juvenile lifers in Pennsylvania, has gone back home to reestablish this new version of himself.
It's still that, like, going from black and white to color, you know, and it's still very vivid. It's very real, and I hope that doesn't go away. I hope everything just doesn't become mundane and usual, because it's just not for me.
But always in the back of his mind still is the reason why he lost 30 years of his life to begin with, and the person who lost his life because of Michael's bad decisions that night in 1988. He will never forget it or forgive himself for it.
I can't change anything. All I can do is try to be the best person I can be. That's all I can do. I can't ever make up for it. I can't replace anything. I can't change the past. All I can do is try to make a better future and hope that's enough.
What lies ahead for Michael and the other juvenile lifers, we don't know. But he hopes whatever happens, he keeps moving forward on the long road to redemption.